My name is Peyton, and I've been helping Michelle out with the conference. It's been an incredible experience putting it together, and we are thrilled with the turnout. One thing I wanted to turn everybody's attention to, there's some sheets around here for a Music Business Expo that's coming up right here at the Melting Point on April 27th. It's essentially going to be a services fair for a lot of different people who have different businesses within the music industry. Featured in these two ballrooms, kind of directly behind you. At the same time, the UGA Music Business Program is going to be having their May Day event here with bands from the program participating. And I guess without further ado, I want to introduce Gabe Vodicka, who is our moderator for the next panel. Gabe is the music editor for Flagpole. And we're hoping to have a great conversation about things that we love about the Athens music scene and things that we could do to make it better. We have some of our finest members of the music community up here with us, among the many that are in this town. And without further ado, Gabe and the rest of these guys. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming out and sticking around. I guess I'll go through and introduce our panel really quickly since we have so many of them. Starting on your right over here, we have let me look at your official title here on the program. Director of Product Development for New West and Normaltown Records. He's also in charge of booking at Normaltown Hall, Tommy Robinson. Next to Tommy, we have the assistant talent buyer and manager at the Georgia Theater and the talent buyer at Green Room, Mr. Rick Paws. To my left here, we have the ambassador of the Athens Hip-Hop community, as well as the co-founder of ATHfactor Entertainment, Montu Miller. We've got a scene veteran, drummer and songwriter, and also an academic advisor at UGA's honors program, Mr. Jeremy Wheatley. Next to Jeremy, we have, she's a national publicist with the Athens-based PR firm Team Clermont, and also the owner of Arrowhawk Records, Alyssa DeHayes. And finally, ACC Commissioner for District 9, Mr. Kelly Girtz. So we've got several topics to go through. I will start off with kind of a broad question here. And after we talk for a bit, we'll have kind of an extended Q&A for those who have questions or comments, so feel free to kind of keep those in mind as we go. But I'd like to start by asking kind of a general question with some kind of subcategories here. And that is, how can we transform Athens from being known as kind of a music town to being known as a music industry town? How do we sort of create jobs for musicians and people become kind of a business destination? And following that, how do we keep bands here once they reach kind of that magic level of success? And I'd like to hear from any and all of you, but I think Tommy and Kelly might have some good insights in this from kind of from the business and the government side of things. So I don't know if one of y'all wants to.
First off, thank you guys for having us all up here. This is a pretty cool thing. I'm excited to be a part of it. But to answer your question, Gabe, a couple months ago, Lisa Love, who runs the Georgia Music Hall of Fame in Atlanta, got together with brought some state representatives to town to talk about how we can bring more industry to Georgia in general. And to whittle that down into Athens, I think part of it could possibly, building on that conversation, one of the things that they saw was that the tax incentives that they've given to the film industry has really created a boom in TVs and film coming to Georgia, using it as a place for production, basically, not just filming. It's post-production, all sorts of things. So in that sense, I think it could be a really good thing to give those same type of tax incentives. And I'm not going to begin to say that I know what those tax incentives are or what exactly can be done. But I think bringing incentives in general to create business, to keep business, develop business, all sorts of things like that would be a really good start to building, Georgia, and more centrally just building Athens. So, Kelly?
There are a few mechanisms that I think are worth talking about when it talks about creating any kind of jobs, and music jobs in particular, since that's the focus of our panel here. Like Tommy, I'm just lucky to be here, and as a non-musician who might be able to pick 3 chords out if you really tried, glad to be on stage with all these folks who actually know something about the music industry. Here in Athens-Clarke County, a couple of years ago, we employed a technique that the state uses called an opportunity zone. In a designated opportunity zone, you can get a tax credit of $3,500 per job if in these zones you create 2 jobs or more. So we've got about half a dozen of these now in town. The Newton Bridge corridor that kind of extends up to where the poultry plant is one. Some segments of Highway 78 heading east toward Oglethorpe County, some pieces of Atlanta Highway heading west out of downtown, and there are a handful of others. So in terms of a real tangible opportunity, that's one, and that's one that we can wave out there as folks are moving into town, and we have quite often. And even as recently as about 3 months ago, somebody who had some businesses in the Tracy Street area asked about expanding that opportunity zone into the Tracy Street and Barber Street area, and so I've got the government evaluating that possibility. The state has a pretty strict checklist in order to create an opportunity zone, but that's one way that we can very tangibly say, yeah, here's something we can offer you, the prospective employer. In terms of other things, it's pretty clear that there's some national trends that just are so big and so sweeping that Athens isn't going to overcome the national trends. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, well, where's our niche? What do we have? When the undergrads come to town from Alpharetta or Rome or Savannah, they're going to like Luke Bryan, or they're going to be into Sound Tribe Sector 9 this year, or whatever the kids are into. But what we can do is say, well, we've got this entertainment area that's sort of 12 blocks, and we've got a lot going on here. How can we capitalize on that even further than we have? At least one of the ways that we ought to be thinking is in terms of residential patterns. If all of your housing is out by the mall, or all of your housing is out on Barnett Shoals Road, those are folks who aren't going to come home from a day job or come home from a long day at school and then say, yeah, I'm willing to roll down to the Melting Point or go over to Caledonia and see a band. But what we've seen in recent years is more and more residential development downtown, like the Standard just across the street. So that's going to be 600 bedrooms full of people who might be filling this place and might be customers for the venues, might be buying CDs from the bands, or certainly paying cover. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about this later, but I think one of the expansion areas is diversity in the crowd that is downtown. And at least one of the kinds of diversity is just age diversity. I've gone from being the youngest person in the room who is holding on to that fake ID to, sometimes one of the longer in the tooth members of the bar at 2 in the morning. And I always think, well, what can we do to get folks who are in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s coming out and, spending their dollars, and sometimes those folks have more dollars on music generally. So I've been kind of excited that the residential development that's across from the Holiday Inn is primarily going to be targeted at professionals, not the student population. And so I think continuing that trend can be something that as a byproduct will benefit the music industry.
Are there other cities that we can look at, or that ACC is looking at, to kind of compare ourselves to in this regard?
There are a couple of towns that we've taken field trips to just to try and figure out, what can we do better. Greenville, South Carolina is one. In the region, Chattanooga is another. Nationally speaking, I was just talking with Tommy before the program about Austin, Texas, where I lived immediately prior to being in Athens in '95. And you see these places where they're capitalizing on what they have already, whether it's kind of natural phenomenon. If you've got a great river gorge, whether it's having a sports stadium that you can attach some kind of live music activities to. I mean, Cobb County is going through that right now as they're looking at the Braves relocation. And so I think we ought to be thinking in terms of symmetry between the music industry and other things that happen in town. I have to give kudos to, the bigger downtown venues. It seems like the Georgia Theater and 40 Watt have really figured out this football game weekends, book a hot upcoming country act in, and, you're going to have 1,200 people in the door. And so I think thinking in those terms is smart.
Just one comment. Something I was always excited about when I would hear it talked about or considered would be turning College Ave from Clayton to Broad as a green space. I used to kind of daydream about how, one, that would be great for one thing, but two, to have it as a spot for you could, like maybe designated busking for a spot that local bands could play out on Saturday afternoons or Sundays, and then use it also as a concert venue, like a more, how to put it, not bigger or larger, but not amphitheater size, but just that would be a central, unique spot. I think that could do a lot of promotion for music and everything else, other things.
I think in terms of public spaces, an enormous deficit in downtown is just a big open green space. I'll be honest and say that probably that block of College is not going to end up being the green space, but there are a bunch of other places in and around the immediate ring of downtown that would be really viable candidates. I mean, to be able to have a permanent bandstand set up somewhere would be fantastic. And in the long run, to have a couple of permanent bandstands where you knew that you could rotate activities and to have something like a lot of cities have when they have city festivals, and to have a couple of places that don't require the temporary sorts of fixtures that ATHfest has to use.
Going beyond bringing in, companies and attracting these kind of jobs to Athens, how can we sort of promote ourselves better as our current self? I for lack of a better word, the REM complex. How can we move beyond sort of being known for birthing these great bands in the 1980s and sort of promote who we are in 2014? I don't know if Alyssa, as a publicist, you have something to add to that, or anybody wants to jump in.
I mean, I think one thing that I see a lot is there's this sort of pervading idea that if you try to promote yourself or you want to get the word out about your band on a national level, then you're sacrificing some kind of like really cool artist cred. If you're gonna spend your Sunday cranking out emails to bloggers pitching your band, that's not cool. That's really lame. But it's not. If you're passionate about what you do, other people should know about it. And there are so many little things that people could do, just even letting national outlets know months before your record release that you have a record coming out. People can't cover something they don't know about. My roommate is a music writer for Paste and Creative Loafing, and she gets assigned stories, goes online, can't find images of that band, a Facebook page for that band, website, links to any kind of music. These are all things you can do for free, just taking what you have of yourself, or for very little money. Get a friend to take some band photos, and then people can cover you because they have something to post. Just making a minimum effort to get information out about yourself will help people find you.
I was going to say one of the, to kind of speak to that, towards that a little bit, I think one of the things we're fighting in this, may or may not be a labels perspective, is that it's a different age. It's in the same breath of what Alyssa just said, it's like there's a lot that's hard to find, and then there's a lot that's out there. And somebody like REM is an amazing band, did amazing things, and of course there's the B-52s and a lot of smaller bands that weren't as successful that have come out of here and made a name, of course, like the Elephant Six folks and everything like that. But in today's, not to generalize, in today's world, whatever you want to say, it's just a little bit, I feel it's a little bit tougher to make a name. Nobody knows exactly what that spark is. It's harder to get a hit. There are more avenues, but there are not as many large breaking avenues to get that name. And one of the things that I think Athens really has going for it that I see as an identity that's growing, or that has grown. Granted, I've only lived here for 2 years, and I came from Austin like Kelly did, is that these clubs, the theater, the 40 Watt, the Melting Point, you know, and even the smaller clubs that are coming up have really created this identity of Athens being this really awesome live music town. It's got a great scene, it's got a really good locally supported scene, and then it's got a national scene that, you know, comes through at certain times. I think a lot of clubs capitalize on the perfect time to come through, and it makes sense to do that, but, you know, it's hard to pinpoint a band and how a band can get successful today and what exactly makes it click, but I think the one thing that Athens really has going for it is the ability to bring a lot of bands in to a lot of clubs, and you can go out on any given night and see 5 or 6 really good shows, not just national, local, that can really develop this scene. And I don't know, I personally hope that that's what Athens kind of gets identified by.
I guess related to that, I think we're certainly improving in this regard. But Athens does have a reputation among a lot of touring bands for being kind of inconsistent in terms of turnout and maybe treatment by, you know, various venues, and they'll often opt to play Atlanta sort of by default. And like I said, I think we're kind of moving in a positive direction in this regard, but how do we overcome that perception of Athens as being kind of this? And I think it's something that probably plagues a lot of college towns too, but I don't know if Rick...
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's hard to compete with, you know, on a lot of levels, just population-wise being the first thing I think of off the top of my head. But what we try to do at the green room for these bands is we try and give them like meal tickets. We actually put a green room in the green room, which was, I don't know, kind of necessary. But we let bands crash. Well, let them leave their gear in overnight. Do a lot of things like that. Our biggest problem is cover, and we battle that. We get a lot of pushback from that a lot, even like $2 and $3 shows. And I think that's probably another topic we're going to talk about later. But yeah,
we can segue into that now if you want. Also, I mean, how does that affect
the free versus
right?
Yeah, what was your question? Free. The next one was free versus is it?
Yeah, just weighing the value of live music against the exposure in terms of
it's hard because we'll charge, you know, $3 covers on these great bands from out of town, and then they'll get there and there'll be no one around, especially if we don't put a local on, which you want us to really have to put locals on. But so we'll get a pushback for $2 or $3, and then we ended up just talk to the guitar player, like, hey man, let's just do a free show. They're usually cool with that, and then they just want the exposure, you know, at my level, you know, 40 Watt Georgia Theaters, you know, they can get the money, but that's when it's at my level. So.
Anybody else have anything to say about sort of the perception of Athens among touring bands, and how we can attract them here?
I don't know what the answer is in attracting them here, but I have noticed for a long time in working with nationally touring bands that they come to Athens and they're like, what's the deal? Athens is known as being this legendary music town. We're so excited for our Athens show, and now no one is here. And I've had nationally successful bands come into town and everyone's like, never heard of them. Because we kind of have a bit of a habit of being really insular. We're great at supporting our own, but I don't know that the average friend I have in Athens is like following national music coverage. So then when a great touring band comes to town, everyone's like, who's in that band? Do I know him personally? Don't care. $3? No way. I mean, I've put together shows for friends of mine, and my own friends are like, oh, $3, and then they go sit and drink at a bar all night. So, you know, I think all of us can just maybe make an effort to pay more attention to what's happening outside of our gates.
I think I don't mean this to sound weird, but I've had it happen even to me a few times, and it kind of illustrates some. You don't see it as much in other places touring around. You do see it somewhere, but there is a certain mindset that even $3 for a bill that has 5 bands on it can't be. It's just not. I think some of it is a symptom. It's a real big social town, and that's great, and people come, they want to come and they want to be involved, but in more of a social aspect rather than maybe kind of totally being there for the show or whatever. To the point where I have played benefits and had my own friends, I won't name, but call me and ask to be put on the guest list for a AIDS Athens benefit that I'm playing. And that's a weird thing to think about, really. You won't pay $5 for an AIDS Athens benefit that has 6 bands on it. It's something I can't put my finger on it, but that's unusual. That kind of shouldn't be the way it works sometimes. I don't know the solution to that. I think some of it is kind of changing for the better already with even like early start times for shows and the more kind of proper, there's a relaxed feel. I think the theater's changing that. I think Green Room's changing that. I think World Famous is changing that with kind of earlier shows, and it seems like more of an event that's kind of, you know when it's going to start, you know when this band's going to start, and you kind of know the process, and I think that's kind of naturally evolving a little bit, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. Jeremy touched on something that I had a little note written down upon. Figuring out a showtime that works for all of Athens. I feel like the service industry day and night and the 9 to 5 day and night run about 6 hours apart. And so I have friends that are big music fans, but they have to be in their office at 8 a.m. and they're always like, oh man, can't believe you went out to a show on a Thursday night. That would just be so cool. But I have to get up at 8 a.m. and the band I want to see isn't even going to go on stage till 12:30 or 1. And if we were to try to change our times and meet somewhere in the middle, it'd definitely have to be a gradual process, because for a long time people would continue to show up at midnight and miss the band they wanted to see. But there's got to be some kind of compromise to finding show times where people will still spend a lot of money at the bar, but also anyone can come out to a show regardless of what they have to do the next day.
I think it's important to cast a pretty wide net too. Like Rick's mentioned earlier, you know, we're never going to be a Boston or a DC. You know, we're never going to be the place where, you know, I mean, anybody, you know, from, you know, a John Hyatt, kind of that generation of person, to you know, Laura Veers or somebody is packing a room of 500 people 2 nights in a row. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But I think what we can do is think, well, since a lot of bands on the Georgia Theater 40-watt level tend to do a couple of national tours or sort of go-rounds on a touring cycle, you know, when they come to town, you know, those venues I think would be well served by coupling with local hotels and restaurants. And you know, in the same way that we have people staying overnight for football games or big events like that, looking at Athens as a place where, you know, you may have graduated from 10 years ago, but damn, you know, Nico Case is playing at the Georgia Theater. Let's stay overnight at the Holiday Inn, or, you know, at Hotel Indigo or somewhere. You know, have a great meal. You know, go see the band, and, you know, attract 150 people from the Atlanta market for those kind of events. I think on that smaller level, it is a dicier thing. I mean, I've experienced that phenomenon through friends of the, yeah, can you get me on the guest list to the benefit, which is just sketchy.
Let's go back for a minute to the free shows versus paid shows things. That's been an ongoing kind of concern here in Athens for several years. Does anybody else have anything to add to that discussion in terms of, you know, what's the benefit of having these free shows? Does the exposure sort of outweigh
exposure? I think
the
that's what
devaluing
we're
of
banking on. You know, checking out a band that you might not give it a shot to. And like Jeremy said, we are socially, you know, it's a social town. But as far as bands, sometimes I wonder if the listener, or the person that goes and checks out bands, there's too many options sometimes. I mean, there's like 10 rooms under 200 cap. When I did a kind of real quick math today, that's a lot of, you know, to fill every night. It's hard.
I guess that's another topic is kind of the level of saturation that we have, and to what extent that's.
Segue into all this.
No. But to what extent, I think that's a good point, because I mean, you know, we have, you know, dozens of venues here in town and thousands and thousands of shows every year. Are we too saturated? Do local bands play too much? I mean, that's a whole other topic, but
I think, sometimes it really does feel like you're like, so it's Friday night, I want to go out. Well, my best friend is playing a show, and my coworker's playing a show, and my friend from my old house is playing a show, and my next door neighbor's playing a show, and how do you decide what to do? I mean, even with $2 and $3 shows, if you have to stop by 4 shows in one night, granted, it's only $12, but sometimes it feels like we already have sort of a small pie of who the Athens showgoers are, and then we're dividing it over so many venues and so many shows, and new show spaces are constantly popping up. Not that it's a bad thing to have an ambition of starting more and more venues, but I wish there was some way for people to communicate more and maybe say like, oh, well, we got offered a spot at this venue on Friday night, but it looks like there's already like 6 shows that night of similar bands. Maybe we should actually turn down this opportunity since there's already so many events at the same night rather than just everyone playing all the time and drowning each other out.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as saturation and playing for free and stuff, I think, one of the things that I look at, and even involved in just the short term with Normal Town Hall and such is that there are definitely, I agree with Rick, there are definitely good reasons to play free. There is exposure involved with it. But if you're a local band that has some sort of start, some sort of movement going, if you're making a name for yourself, the personal opinion, it might be good to pull back on the reins on how many times you play in town. You might save those free plays for when you're releasing an album or when you have new material, and you might save your plays in town for when a bigger national act is coming in town and they want a local to help put people in the seats. And that's one thing that when we're looking at our artists going on the road, when we're working with our smaller artists, especially in their booking agents, it's, okay, who do we know in this town? What bands are making a name for themselves in this town? All right, let's reach out to those guys and try and pair our artists with them so that we have a built-in audience already. We're not just relying on promotion and ticket sales off of our name. It's relying on the actual town. And once again, I've been here for 2 years. I love Athens. I think the local scene is just supported better than anywhere I've ever been. But with that being said, I do think there are a couple local bands that I'm friends with and really like that play out too often. And
do you want to name names even?
No, certainly not. But it can saturate the market. It can cause problems. And, Athens, if you're trying to cast a wide net and you're trying to get people that aren't, speaking from a band's perspective, aren't your friends or, like Jeremy said, trying to get on your list or anything, kind of lost my thought for a second, but it's just, I just feel like limiting your plays might be the best thing to do and doing it when it seems right. And I understand playing in the scene, going out and playing shows to, hone your craft. I mean, get better with your band. There are a lot of bands in town that rotate players too. So it's like you can only practice and rehearse so much. You can get more growth playing out. So I understand that aspect, but sometimes in a smaller town like Athens, where it is a social town, and another word to say that is it's a drinker's town because of all the bars downtown, music can be secondary. So if you keep your plays limited, you probably can get a larger amount of people out at one time as opposed to getting that one crowd separated 3 times in 3 plays in 1 month, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you definitely should limit your plays, but there's one thing about Athens that I've learned since I've been here is like, people are spoiled in Athens. Like, I've been many different scenes, many different places around the country, and like, $3 to $5 for a show, that's not really that bad. I feel like a lot of times when we do shows, and I've done shows for many, many years, like, we might do a $2 show, $3 shows, and like, I'm still having people call me to ask to be put on the guest list. It's $3. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, it's $3. And you want to be put on the guest list for $3? Like, that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's saying, oh, well, we support our local bands, and, you know, and we do. But are we supporting them just because they have free shows? You know? Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where, okay, I've been to other cities and towns where, like, there's unknown, like, I mean, I did with hip-hop, unknown hip-hop acts, and it's packed out. You know, there's spots in Chicago, it's packed out. Nobody even knows who's about to get on stage. But it's packed out, and everybody paid $10 to get in. You know, because they're really into the scene. They're really into what's going on. But it's like, we're spoiled in Athens. Like, I really, there's a lot of snobs in Athens. Like, people are just, like, music snobs and townies and all these people that, like, it's like, oh, well, $3, dude, I don't know that band. Really? Like, $3, man? Come on. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, to me, yeah, you should definitely limit your plays to piggyback on that. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of times, like, yeah, playing free is cool, but, like, sometimes these bands are trying to build up. So, like, I mean, $3 to me, $3 to $5 is nothing when, you know, I'm going to shows in other cities and towns where, like, I'm going to see people for $10, $15 that I've never seen just because I want to support the scene. So if we're really going to support each other, then let's do it and not just be like, okay, I'm coming out to a show because it's free. You know? I don't know.
Are we allowed to ask questions or say anything in response to them?
Yeah, well, you can go ahead and ask now. We're going to have a question and answer segment at the end, but if you have something to say now.
I'm just listening to everybody talking about, you know, the entire scene right here. And I grew up with Seminarian because I like what he said. I like what he stood for. To me, the problem is nobody's standing for anything right here anymore. There's nothing for the city to support, stand behind, and believe in. That's what we lack. That's what everybody lacks if you look at it in general. But when people believe in something, they don't care whether they'll pay $50 if they believe in what you're doing. So we need to, I think we need to start publicizing and promoting these people who are trying to do positive things in the community, who are trying to do things who have a good message or at least a relative message. In contrast to the people who just want to get there and make noise on stage. At least have a purpose behind what we do. That's all I can say.
Kind of segueing from what Montu was saying, and to bring him in a little bit more on this, the question of how we bring visibility to segments of our music community that we don't necessarily see downtown. Case in point being the hip-hop scene, which has really thrived in recent years, but you wouldn't necessarily know it from looking in from the outside. You know, not limiting it to just hip-hop, but how do we bridge these gaps, and how do we sort of bring visibility to these segments of our music community?
Well, I'll say what I said again, and I mean, people know, like, when they talk to me, like, Athens is filled with a bunch of snobs here. Like, people have their scenes that they want to go to, and that's what they go to. You know, like, through the years, like, I've done a couple shows where we actually had a show a couple years ago called Southern Gumbo, where we had some indie rock, some punk rock, some hip hop, just live show, like, different genres, great things. But, like, through the years, since I tried to build bridges with bands and venues, like, they don't want to build it with hip hop. They don't. And in a sense, I understand them, because they don't understand what hip hop really is and what it is. You know, they see the media version of us being all misogynistic and, you know, just talking about rims and chains and whatnot, but they don't understand that, like, there's a segment of hip hop in this town right now we go above and beyond that. Like, we're talking about issues. We're progressives, but, like, they don't want to do shows with us. You know, like, there's not going to be even. I mean, you know, sometimes when, you know, Georgia Theater brings into certain hip hop acts, like, y'all don't ask locals to open up. You know, and I know sometimes that they bring their own openers. I know that. You know, but at the same time, like, I feel like these venues and these people in town, like, just don't give us enough respect. They feel like, okay, because what I see on TV, see the guys with baggy jeans and this, that, and the other, like, I don't want hip-hop nowhere near this, but, like, there's a lot of good hip-hop in this town that, like, if you would just actually build a bridge with us, we could do this all together. You know, like you could have a whole different market that would appreciate your music. Because like I listen to all kinds of bands in town. You know, I listen to all of it. You know, like I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but like I've been in Athens for 10, 12 years, and like I listen to indie rock, punk rock, I listen to all of it. But like I'll go to you all shows, but y'all won't come to our shows. You know, like y'all won't. We've done the Hip Hop Awards 2 years in a row, and it's all us. It's all hip hop. Like y'all not gonna come to our award show, but I'll be at the Flagpole award show. You know what I'm saying? So like, where is the point where y'all are gonna start supporting us? Yeah, we're a young community. Yeah, we have made some mistakes in the past, but at the same time, like what we're trying to build now today and be really, really about our business, like we want to reach out. When I reach out to you, like don't ignore my emails. Like just say no to me. You know, that's the one thing, and not to just get too long-winded, but that's the one thing in this town that I really, really like. I really hate. Like I've dealt with all these venues, all these people, and like the one thing that y'all will, a lot of people just like, oh yeah, I'll call you, I'll email you. I never get no email, I never get no call. My thing is, if you don't want to work with me, just tell me that, so then I'm not constantly looking for your email. Just tell me, I don't want to work with hip hop. I'm good with that. Tell me straight up. Just tell me straight up you don't want to work with me, and then I'm good with that, and then I don't have to look for you anymore. But don't be like, oh, well, just give me a little like song and dance about, oh, I'm gonna email you, I'm gonna do this, and with AthFest and these other places that like, don't act like we don't send the emails, we don't send the press releases, we don't do these things, because we do. And we're really trying to build a scene here, and it ain't just, yeah, we do have our poppy side of our hip hop, but we also have like a progressive side of our hip hop that's like, we doing some things in this. We're in the high schools, and we're doing some really, really good things for this town, and we want to do some things like the indie rockers do, you know?
I think we have Saturday open at the green room if you want to try something.
Well, I really like.
I got to double check. I got to make sure because I'm spring break and all that stuff. I got to make sure everybody's really to work.
I just
and all
want
that
to say
stuff.
something. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt nothing right now, but I think I need to say this because of what Montu just said. I got two young men with me right now. I'm versatile, a wild child. I created a hip hop group in Athens called the Wild Wolf Pack. We go into the middle schools and we talk to the kids about cyberbullying, racial discrimination, sexual acceptance, religious acceptance. So all hip hop is not derogatory. All hip hop is not about what he said. Some people actually just want to tell the truth and see if we can't bring people together. Like I said, I grew up on Stone Temple Pilots, Creed, REM. I've actually been to Michael Stipe's house. So I learned to implement some of this stuff into hip hop. If we can just start getting this community to support positive stuff, whether it's hip hop or ska or whatever, as long as it's something positive that's going to bring the community together, then that will really start resolving a lot of issues. But you have to not be so picky and so stuck up and snobbish. You might look at me and say, this guy's got tattoos, he's got dreadlocks, whatever, but I don't look like I really am. You got to give me a chance to talk to me first before you get to judge me. And that's what's wrong with Athens. Athens is very judgmental. We'll look at you and automatically assume we got you figured out. I know, because I've been here 32 years, I know how we are. We'll look at you and we're like, oh no, not him, not that guy, no way. And then you come to find out 10 days later that that was the guy you should have been talking to. That's all I got.
I think sometimes, just to add on to what you're saying, I think a lot of times when people put a bill together for a show, they get stuck in this way of thinking where they're like, I'm a rock band, so I need to find 3 rock bands that sound just like me to play with. And what you're really doing is you're just only bringing out your shared single group of fans, whereas if you put together a bill that has a hip-hop act and a pop act and a rock band, it seems like it doesn't make sense, but then you could pull 3 different groups of people and the turnout could be even better instead of just everybody that shares a group.
How you guys doing? My name is Noah Johnson. I'm one of the creators of the Athens Hip-Hop Awards. I moved here like a year and a half ago, and just doing research, I was fascinated about the readings of the Athens music scene and how popular it was. And of course, all I kept seeing was B-52 and REM pop up. And I'm like, you know, the scene is so much vibrant, you know, why am I not hearing about any groups that's like local, like recently doing their thing, you know? And you know, we always say that with the media when we talk to them, we say the hip hop community was basically disenfranchised here. It's like it has no support, no life. And the one thing that I feel like Athens can do to spark up the whole music scene is embrace the whole music scene. I've been here almost since we started doing this, and mostly all the conversation has been about bands, rock, indie rock, and I feel like hip hop is really, it could be that element to spark up the whole Athens music scene. For the last 2 years, it's been very vibrant. I really appreciate Gabe and my boy here for Andre for covering the event and seeing what we're doing in the community and covering these artists that are doing barbecues and community events, and some of these artists are teachers, and you know, I know you guys know about life and the community chest. This is all hip hop, and if you really want to give a higher vibration to the music scene here, we need to embrace the music scene here, and it's not just the indie rock scene, and it's not just Rim, and I'm sure there's groups that's doing numbers now in both the hip hop and indie rock genre. Like they got 1 million views on YouTube. They're doing paid shows, but the community don't really know about them because that's not being recycled. That information not being put out there. And I agree with the, you know, too much exposure. You're cutting yourself off. You're exploiting yourself. You're not going to get paid for shows. So, and one other thing, maybe you guys can tell me about this, but since I've been here like a year and a half, I haven't seen no acts, whether hip hop or rock, like really go hard in the streets like what I'm used to. Flyers, posters, CDs in every convenience store, every place I go. I haven't seen that yet, like, and I really don't understand it. And maybe I'm going to be the first to do it, but could you guys explain that to me?
Yeah, I think some of that, you're definitely right. I think some of it's just a little bit of disillusionment, and you don't think you need to kind of put in the work, physical work. I mean, people don't even think about even putting out a record or an album in physical form. You know, all that's kind of changing. If you do anything online, it's kind of more relying on that. I don't know whether that's good or bad. I think you have to do both. So, yeah, I thought for a long time, I worked at a bar when I was in college. This is late 90s. It's not here anymore. But we had a hip hop night, and it was just DJs on Tuesdays. It was packed. You could not get in the door. Yeah. Tuesday nights, Mean Mike's, you could not walk in. It was that crowded. Maybe that, and I don't know. Maybe this idea wouldn't work in some. You need a partner. You need a place. You need a venue that supports it for sure, without question. Maybe to get a step in and have a night somewhere that you knew every second Wednesday you could program it, you know, bill it, promote it all yourself. This is an idea. I was just thinking about that. That was something that people relied on. They're like, Tuesday nights, that's where I'm going, that's where the music's playing that I want to hear. And yeah, showcase type of thing. Maybe that's something we could, but you need a venue to do it. You need a partner to do it. You know?
Mr. Wheatley, I agree wholeheartedly with you. My name is Michael Palmgarden. I partially represent Noise of We Productions. Just want to say the other day my car ran out of gas. I stopped at a gas station on North Avenue by the martial arts gym, and I saw so many independent hip hop artists display their independent, not just one, not just two, not just 12, but dozens. I believe what Mr. Miller said is true. Except we're not as, I've been here almost 30 years, or many of us are on the same page as he's where Mr. Miller went, and I agree. An event where the hip hop artists, I didn't have enough money to put barely a gallon of gas in my car, and I wanted to buy each and every one of those hip hop CDs, and each one was different. There's a huge scene here that's going unmarketed. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I wanted to touch on one last topic, and then we can open it up to other Q&A, and that is ATHfest. Is ATHfest, as it is now, an honest representation of what's going on in Athens? And is it attractive to outsiders? And subsequent to that, should we work, or should ATHfest work, to be kind of more like these other regional festivals, like Hopscotch or Moogfest, which kind of highlight the towns they're in while also working to bring in kind of outside talent and money? And any of you guys are welcome to jump in on this. I know Kelly, as a representative of the city government. You might have some insight on this.
I guess I'd probably talk as a music fan more than a city representative. I mean, from a municipal management perspective, AthFest just involves closing streets, having, amenities available, booking more police officers, doing the things any city has to do when you're going to bring in 20,000 people or something on a Saturday night. From the listener perspective, I will say I like the idea that AthFest is a niche opportunity, that it's not just, I mean, look, Outkast is playing like 40 U.S. festivals this summer, and every one of them has like the same dozen headliners. So do we want to be just another town that has, whoever is headlining all those other things? Well, if the replacements will play in Athens, I would accept that. But other than that, I really like the idea that it does highlight a scene. I'm a working person. I'm one of those people who's got to be at work by 8 o'clock every morning. And I also am passionately into music, and it's a sustaining force in my life. But I can't see every band that I want to, throughout the regular course of the year. But I get that wristband, and I make a point of going to see bands that I've not seen consistently and regularly. Now, I think AthFest could probably do some other things. I think AthFest could, because it's a nonprofit, they could be that conduit for opening up the floodgates to diversity. Athens could be the place where more hip-hop artists make their stand. AthFest could be the place that busts open the Latin music scene in this town. I think that's a real underexplored area folks ought to be looking at. I work with high school kids by day and have for over a decade, and I've got a bunch of students who I've worked with who are great drummers, great guitar players who are from Mexico or Cuba or Guatemala. Where are those kids in the bars? That's what I would like to see, and I think AthFest could be the avenue to make some of that happen.
Well, maybe it's not necessarily a matter of changing AthFest, but letting other festivals like Slingshot that are trying to bring in national and international acts grow. So then you have your local showcase, which is all local, everyone's represented, but then you also have some programming where, national bands all together in 1 week, and it's not a bunch of bands you've seen before and all your friends. I think there's a place for both.
Anybody else have anything to add on that or any of the topics we've discussed?